Greetings, citizens of the galaxy. Welcome to SWTOR Gaming.
Welcome.
I believe the Force has guided you to me.
Who we truly are is defined by our actions.
So let's get into it. First time around, I didn't really enjoy it as much. Second time, when I was with my family, I enjoyed it much more. First time around, I was with opening night crowd, and that could have had an effect on the way I was viewing the film. And I had certain expectations that somehow I was excited to see, and I did not leave at home. So that could have been an issue as well. Now, just to be clear on this, just to be 100% clear on this, right? I wanted to enjoy the film completely as a whole. There are certain things that I liked and I didn't like, and I'm going to go through it. First, I want to talk about what I liked, and I'm going to go through when I noticed everything. Number one thing I liked was they finally answered the question that I already knew the answer to in the begin with. Is Finn Force sensitive? The answer is a resounding yes. When I noticed it was Force Awakens in the very beginning. I knew also, because I followed the production, that they had to reshoot the movie because Finn was dominating. He had a lot of action scenes with the lightsaber that were cut. So I first noticed when they're on the planet, Finn's first mission, and he's about to fire at the citizens of the village, and he decides not to, removes his helmet. Kylo Ren stops and looks at Kylo Ren, kind of horrified, kind of scared. But that was the first time I noticed, hey, there's something might be here. Why does Kylo Ren notice a regular stormtrooper? I'm like, I try to write it off and say, well, he took off his helmet, and as they're taking away Poe Dameron, maybe that's probably why. And then Phasma goes, who told you to remove your helmet? When I think when they're back on Starkiller Base, and he's like, no, I'm sorry, and he goes, go back to conditioning or whatever. And when he escapes from Poe Dameron, I've noticed now two things. He says to Poe Dameron, no, it was Poe Dameron who says, you need a pilot. He goes, I need a pilot. But when he leaves, Kylo Ren knows FN2187. So why would Kylo Ren, apprentice of the Supreme Leader, know all of a sudden that he would, that he has this, why does he have a connection, or why does he even notice? He's just a stormtrooper, right? So I believe before we even see Rey, I'm gonna have to go see this again, but I believe Snoke says there's been awakening. Have you felt? And most people attribute this to Rey. I thought it was actually Finn, but now as we see more things, it was just a Force generally awakening in the galaxy. So it wasn't just Rey, it wasn't just Finn, but there's been an awakening. There's been several awakenings all around the same time. Finn awoke before Rey did. It was the Force's will to have Finn find Rey, the connection that they formed through the Force. This movie actually, 3 times at least, does this movie actually show you that Finn is Force sensitive. One definite one, which if you missed that, it's like, dude, go back and watch the movie, because this was a big sign. And they actually mimicked a scene from A New Hope, and from The Last Jedi, really. But it was really from A New Hope. Finn detects that it's the Knights of Ren when they're on the desert planet of Pisana. He somehow detects that the thing they're looking for is over here. And then when the life is getting sucked out of Rey, he almost collapses, and similar to the way that Obi-Wan did in A New Hope when Alderaan was destroyed. He feels a disturbance in the Force. He goes, it's Rey. How does he know it's Rey? I mean, they're not really next to each other. He hasn't seen her. But here's another thing. Going back to when in The Last Jedi, who are the only 2 people that really feel, who you see actually, and you hear the voices of the people crying out for help? It was Rey when she looked up, and you hear the people. Like everyone else sees it, you'll see the Hazodim system being destroyed, right? But when it's Rey and Finn, you hear the people screaming for help, crying out in terror. So my whole idea is that Finn is Force sensitive, and I think the first movie set that up real well, but it doesn't spell it out for you. It doesn't give you all the clues, but they are there. So when there's some people who I would tell about this and I don't want to see that. Finn is not Force sensitive. He's just a stormtrooper. He's just a janitor. All he did was sweep, and people don't realize that. And if you want to understand a little bit more about how the Force works, things like that, Prince and Urban Acolyte does a really good job at understanding that. Spiritual aspects of Star Wars, spiritual aspects of the Force. He also goes into the hero's journey, which if you haven't read Joseph Campbell and the Hero of 1,000 Faces, I believe the book is, it's on Audible. And if you want to understand Star Wars at a deeper level, it's something that is prerequisite if you want to work in the story group. So I would take a look at that. Just get on Audible, listen to it. It's very interesting. It ties up all the narratives we have through culture growing up, Jesus, Buddha, and how it shows the similarities on this hero's journey, right? So I knew Finn was going to be force sensitive, but they really just showed him. And then so people were saying, you know, oh, when he wanted to tell Rey something, he wanted to tell her that he loves her. I thought so too. First time around, I was like, oh, he's going to tell him how he feels. But then, like, after watching Kylo and Rey kiss, which I'm going to get to, I was saying, please don't do that to yourself. I'm just tired of seeing another person of color being put on the back burner as a love interest. So I was like, that would be so lame. So especially if he has a connection with Rey the way he does, he would already know what she's thinking. But so he was, according to Chris Terrio, and he's confirmed that he was going to tell Rey that he's force sensitive. That's why it's something that only Maz Kanata knew, and this is Maz Kanata actually gives him the lightsaber for the first time, and it's something that he already knew. Like, he could, if you imagine how terrified he was. Everyone talked about Rey being terrified of her power. He's just been aware of what real monster Kylo Ren is, because he could feel the dark side of the Force in there. So he was horrified. You know, he was scared. He had to get out of there, and that's why he was running, which makes total sense too. Like, if you awaken to light and you see the ridiculous amounts of evil that's going on, he's like, I gotta keep Rey away from him. And maybe, in a certain sense, maybe Finn kind of knew that if he had to get her away from the First Order, maybe he didn't know why he knew, but maybe he knew. That's something for another story that they can tell in another time. So I really like. Let's go into another thing I really like. I really like that they paid tribute to Leia, having Rey call her master, showing us, I guess, footage, which I thought it was digitally enhanced footage. I guess it was extra footage used, left over from Return of the Jedi, which is shocking. That's what I guess what Chris Terrio had said, that they used that footage, and or maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm gonna have to link an article that he put out. He answered a lot of questions to the jabs that people had at the Rise of Skywalker. So I'm gonna put that article from the Hollywood Reporter interview he had in the comments below. But a lot of the stuff that he explained, I got once I had time to digest the film. So I like that what was I saying before? Leia got her due. You start seeing her and Luke train, and she kind of, I guess, bests Luke a little bit. This falls in line with canon they've set up, that Yoda wanted to train Leia first because Yoda thought Luke was a lot more like Anakin Skywalker, and they would create another Darth Vader. Which is in line with that cave in Empire Strikes Back when Luke goes in, and because of his anger, he wants to get vengeance for the man who killed his father. And Yoda goes, only take what you need. You're not going to need your lightsaber. And he takes the lightsaber going for vengeance, and what does he meet? Darth Vader cuts his head off, and only to see his own face. All that's in line. It's the reason why Yoda did not want to train the boy. It was Obi-Wan Kenobi's Force Ghost that really went to Yoda. As soon as he was defeated aboard the Death Star, and he became one with the Force, appeared to Yoda, said, you have to prepare, the boy's going to come to train. I don't want to train the boy, Yoda goes. And this is from a certain point of view, I believe, in the novel, or the collection of short stories, a certain point of view, which tells about how it was Obi-Wan's Force Ghost that convinces Yoda. And Yoda took a lot of convincing, because Yoda's very stubborn. You know, he says it before, he's like, Ben, tell him I'm ready. Ben, tell him I'm ready. He's like, 900 years, for 900 years trained Jedi I have. My own counsel will I keep on who is ready. So you can understand he's stubborn. He didn't want to train him because he was going to go down a dark path. And it was crazy too, taking a little aside away from the movie, in a certain point of view, he sees Luke on Ahch-To many years later, very sad. So he kind of knew that this was something that was going to happen, but he had to train. Going from there, I really like that Leia got her due, and she was called Master by Rey. Leia continued to train her in the Force, which is why, like, a lot of people didn't realize that, okay, in Legends, Leia did have a lightsaber, which is another thing that was cool. Like, it was cool that have Leia have her own lightsaber. It was hidden on Ahch-To, but Leia did have a lightsaber, and Luke was training Leia. Not a lot, but just a little. If you think about Legends, and a lot of the story they did pull from Legends, and he even admits that a lot of stuff they pulled from Legends, and I'm gonna go break that down into another video. Just go into Legends. Leia did carry around a lightsaber. Difference is, I mean, the reason why she didn't continue training, as is explained in this movie, she saw a vision that the culmination of her Jedi training would end up with her having to kill Kylo Ren, put down her own son. So she of course couldn't bring herself to do that, so she stopped. And instead, knowing the rising darkness that was coming out of her son, have Luke train him. So okay, more than that, Lando Calrissian. Come on, Billy D was smoother than smooth. I really enjoyed Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian, the original smooth. Donald Glover did a pretty good job. There's something about Billy D. He's just got this natural charisma, and I enjoyed him. He was a gem. Another thing, Babu Freak. I mean, we've all loved the child or the asset. If you don't know, it's what everyone's calling Baby Yoda. He's the most viral thing on the internet, right? Babu Freak. Babu Freak made me crack up. And that's another thing, too. I love Babu Freak. He was awesome. Or Babu Frick. But the comedy in this movie, the comedy worked in a lot of places. And I found myself laughing. The emotion this movie had. And look, I'm a grown-ass man, but I dropped a tear. You know, these were characters that I grew up with, and I spent a lot of time over the years making connections too. And there were things, certain moments, like when Chewbacca just breaks down after Leia, passes away, and he just pounding the pavement like, why? And it was like, oh man, that was heartbreaking. You know what I mean? There's funny moments when, after C-3PO, he gets his mind wiped, he meets R2-D2, and he's like, man, I'd remember if I had a best friend, which is funny because just before he's like, I got to say R2, you're my best friend. And then he leaves and he's like, he says that thing and he's like, he goes, you want to do what, my what? And then he just, well, I never. And then he just sticks, I guess, just restores his memory up to the point before he left. So that was a lot of things great about this movie. One thing that I didn't know how I felt the first time I saw it, but I did enjoy it. Watching Knights of the Fallen Empire come to life. If you don't know that, that's an expansion for the Star Wars MMORPG. If you know my channel, SWTOR, Star Wars The Old Republic. And there's a scene when the Sith Emperor takes over your body after you kill him, that he asks you 3 or 4 times if you want to use his power. And if you do, like the 2 times before it automatically activates. But if you haven't, you get the choice. And you say yes, and you release torrents of lightning that eventually electrocute all the ships and just shortening them out and destroying them, making them crash thousands of ships. So when I saw Palpatine do that, I was like, this is crazy. They just ripped this from Star Wars The Old Republic, which I would love to know if Chris Terry and the rest of them just play Star Wars The Old Republic. Now people can say, well, Palpatine had similar abilities like that in Legends. And I was like, yeah, from a certain point, he was able to use wormholes, open up wormholes in space and time and send dark side lightning through it. Yeah, Palpatine was ridiculously strong. Like Palpatine from Legends makes sense. He could have came back. In canon, I mean, they didn't really explain it. They just said the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some might consider unnatural. Which I was like, ugh. When I saw that, I heard that, I was just like, all right, sure. And so those are the things I really liked. Rey's story arc of her being a Palpatine, I had mixed feelings about. Second time, I liked it a lot more. A lot of this movie, second time around when I had time to marinate on it, I liked a lot better. Now, I've told you what I liked. Here's some things I didn't like the first time around. Again, like I said, I saw this twice. Second time around, I enjoyed the movie a lot more. Here's a couple things that I did. Oh, and before I go into what I didn't like, there's one more thing. The fan service was really, really thrown in there, which created what I talked about before, a lot of feel-good moments. Luke raising the X-Wing was another great moment, which is deliberate fan service. But if you're a fan, you remember how he struggled on Dagobah to lift it, and he said, I can't, and him doing it as a Force Ghost was a moment that we all kind of like, we got to see it. You know what I mean? It was a good feeling, a good moment. So I did like that. And there's probably some other moments I might think about, but those are the generally other ones. I mean, I guess we'll put Luke raising the X-Wing in an honorable mention. Now I want to talk about things that I didn't like so much. First time around that I was in, later on how I felt around. First time around, I would have to say the movie suffers from pacing. Now, usually when people say a movie suffers from pacing, it's usually because the movie is slow-paced. This movie is not slow-paced. It's the opposite. There is so much crammed into this movie, so much action, so much things, that you don't get a time to properly digest them. It's like before you get to swallow anything, constantly having food shoveled in your mouth, and you're like, I can't fit in more, and it's like a fat food eating contest. You know what I mean? You don't get to enjoy anything. It's just shoveled into your mouth. You're constantly, and you're about to throw up because there's so much stuff. You're like, wait, hold on, doesn't stop. It just does not stop. And this is partly because JJ did not get to work on the second movie. I mean, he was involved in the background a little bit, but Rian Johnson got to do his own thing, and there was no overarching person that was behind all of it. J.J. Abrams, again, he saw a couple things, but he had other things going on. So Rian Johnson, after meeting a little bit with Rian Johnson and seeing, he was even surprised by some of the choices that Rian Johnson took. Again, I loved The Last Jedi. So there are certain things here that I myself had needed time to digest. Let's put it that way. That I didn't have the first time seeing it on the 19th on opening night for us. So here's one of the things. The pacing, like I said, was so quick. It was breakneck speed. So because you didn't get to digest a lot of stuff, you had to just accept. I'm talking about there's suspension of disbelief and then there's suspension of disbelief. You really just had to accept what they gave you. This is really it. If you didn't accept it, the movie was not going to work for you. So the way I did it to myself, and this is exactly how I did it, it was the Force. The Force was behind everything. And because of the speed, you had to literally suffered from conveniences, this movie. Every time they needed something, it would automatically appear. So the way for me to explain it is the Force. It's Star Wars. It had to be the Force. There's no other reason for just the amazing, ridiculous amount of conveniences this movie had. It has to be the Force, and that's how I explained it to myself. First time, though, it was really tough. When Rey got the Sith dagger, and all of a sudden it becomes a compass that points, and it's exactly the outline shape of that. You know, I would have even bought like some kind of sunbeam coming up, like they've done in some other things, and it strikes the dagger at a certain point, and you get a broad idea. Nope, the dagger is exactly the shape of the wreckage, and if she's not standing in the exact spot, she wouldn't have seen exactly where to find, the Wayfinder, right? The Emperor's Wayfinder. So I was just like, oh, come on, man. Seriously? Who's going to buy this? And it was really rough. From the beginning, the first time around, I was like, I can't believe I'm saying this. I didn't like the movie. There were a lot of good moments, but it was just, everything was too convenient. And that's how I felt first time around. I had some time to digest it, focus on the positives, and also just say the Force behind all the convenient things. I also had to preface a lot of stuff and understand that JJ had a tough job. He didn't get to work on the second one. There are things that he had planned to put in place in the second movie that weren't done because he never thought he was going to come back to the franchise anyway. So had JJ been the overarching visionary throughout all three movies, it would have been a little bit different. So he also had to connect what he wanted from The Force Awakens, but also connect things from Rian Johnson's trilogy. And now, I didn't see those connections that well first time around because I wasn't being so present. I would still had things that I wanted to see, storylines I want to see furthered, and some of them did not get furthered. The Bendemption. Was not a fan of the Bendemption. If it wasn't Adam Driver's acting, I don't think at all I would have enjoyed it. Adam Driver, with the short time that he had to display who he would have been as Ben Solo, he was charismatic, amazing. He was amazing. He had that little bit of the Solo flair, with a little bit of like the Jedi. Like I said, so many conveniences. And then I wanted, here goes my expectations. I wanted Kylo Ren to remain the tyrant. So finding out this whole time that not only has he had one of his highest generals as a secret underling of Palpatine this whole time, which makes sense since the story now is Palpatine has masterminded this whole creation of the First Order, but that took away, I felt, from Ben Solo being the tyrant. So technically, I mean, if he would have remained the tyrant, it would have been for nothing. Really, he would have been a dumber version of Anakin Skywalker, in a sense. Like Prince of Urban Acolyte talks about the first time he watched the Revenge of the Sith, he thought Anakin was a dummy until he read the novel, which is no longer really canon. That does a great job of really showing Palpatine's seduction of Anakin Skywalker, but that's a whole different story. But this one, I really wanted him to see just continue being that tyrant, and it didn't happen. Another thing with Snoke being something that was just used to allow Kylo Ren to rise as supreme leader. I wanted something. Since Palpatine was coming back, I was so, I was thinking to myself, yeah, he probably made Snoke, but just to see the jar of Snoke's, I was like, I looked at it, I'm like, well, there you go. That's Snoke's origin story. Snoke's in a jar. I was just like shaking my head, and it's not what I wanted to see. But at the same time, again, that's not the story. That's just me. So, I mean, and they were saying it before at the same time that Snoke was nobody. I mean, I could have done without Snoke's in the jar, but they're there. What are you going to do about it? So, yeah, I had an issue with that. The Braylo. First time I saw that, I just like, but he killed so many people, and why are you, the fact they made out was like, I think it was just a reaction of all the people seeing on opening night, but I was like, oh, and then there was a groan that went through the audience, right? And then they kiss, and after they kiss, he just becomes one with the Force, and there was a chuckle that went out through the audience. I was like, all right, that's it. Goodbye. So that kind of made me laugh. So we had that, and I wasn't a big fan of that, but I was like, all right, they redeemed him. I had like an 80% possibility they were going to redeem him, and I prepared myself mentally for it. I wasn't happy with that choice because, again, I wanted him to remain the tyrant. I wanted this story to be Rey and Kylo Ren. I was hoping Palpatine would embody Kylo Ren, but I mean, that's not the story they told, and I was all right with that eventually. This is the problem what we've had with our community, even with myself, is that we come up with these ideas in our head, and we're like, oh man, that's what I'd like to see, and then you go to the movie and like, oh, they didn't show me what I wanted to see, so I'm upset about it. Me, I just had to let go. I was attached to my own ideas, and I had to let go. And then I was able to enjoy it the second time around for what it was. So this is another thing too. I thought that Rey being a nobody, that was one of my favorite parts. She wasn't attached to anybody. You know, she was a nobody. And J.J. Abrams originally had said that Rey's a nobody. Well, look, it's just like, you know, he had changed his mind, and some people were giving him crap for it. But here's the thing about it. Like, Leia and Luke weren't originally siblings. That's why I had that kiss scene. You know, they weren't originally brother and sister. He later changed that. So creators can change their minds. So they thought, okay, Rian Johnson started an interesting story arc where she's suffering because of her identity. So what's worse than being a nobody? What's worse is that you're not trying to face the fact you're the spawn of the galaxy's greatest evil, and this whole time you've been terrified of yourself, of what you might become. So you pretend I'm a little nobody. I'm a little Rey from Jakku, I'm a nobody. And it's like, no, you're actually a Disney princess now. You're Rey Palpatine. And it's the reason why Kylo Ren wanted her so bad. There's an attachment that he had to her. And he knew. And he wanted to, because she's a Palpatine, I think Kylo Ren, The Last Jedi, wasn't trying to tell her whole entire story, because, again, Vader was never the master of Palpatine. Vader was, you know, and he wanted to fulfill the destiny, but his destiny was really just bringing Rey to Emperor Palpatine. That was the whole story. If you go back now and he was always trying to get Rey to come with him, then to bring her to the unknown region so he could live forever through her. And this is one thing actually I liked. Going back to that, there's a lot of Legends material that suddenly wormed its way into this last chapter of the trilogy that people don't think about. Essence transfer. He didn't go out and say it, but that's essence transfer. He actually says, I am all of the Sith. So if that's true, considering that we have names, we have appearances. Darth Bane, for example, the one who created the rule of 2 in canon. Legends, he got it from Revan in the Bane novel. But he's credited for the rule of 2 because that's what they knew. And you gotta remember, they can do whatever they want with the story because and this is why, and it explains them why no one really knows so much about the Sith. People complain, it's like, a lot of people don't know so much about Sith. They've heard of it, some people haven't, but that's the way the Sith were able to do, is hide for so long. But the Sith Eternal, that cult, thousands of years or whatever on Exogol, rebuilding the Sith Order, waiting for a Dark Lord. Palpatine showed up, I guess. But Palpatine apparently is all the Sith, which means he's not just Palpatine, he's all of them, from Revan beyond. So there must have been some essence transfer. In the way that Jedi can be one with the Force and live after death, Sith just use essence transfer to continue living. So maybe that's what Palpatine was trying to, I'm all the embodiment of all the Sith. I'm going to take you and become more powerful, until he found out. And this, people complain that, other people have complained about him not knowing about the dyad in the Force, but Kylo Ren clearly says it. He doesn't know that we are a dyad in the Force. Us, too, a powerful light, a powerful dark that are rising at the same time, make a create bond, to create a powerful bond that Palpatine doesn't know we have. So if he didn't know we have the bond, he didn't know that he could feed off that. But they're saying, well, this guy creates this really elaborate plan. He's been playing hide and seek. He's been hiding. I saw him, he's a hide and seek champion. He's been hiding for many years, and he didn't know about this. He has all these contingency plans. Didn't know about this. Well, I guess he didn't. But you know, I had no issue with that. But I didn't like the Ben Demption. Didn't like the Snokes in the jar. I was fine with the second time around because once I had seen it and got those initial reactions, got a chance to sit down, and I just enjoyed it for what it is. It's a fun ride, and there's a lot of feel-good moments. You know, Ben just turning to light side after Leia just died. It's not only for her just appearing to him. This is what I have to explain some comments I heard from certain people who said that all he had to do is to turn color to light was yell to say Ben's name. Well, look, it's not that he said Ben's name, that he felt her dying. We saw this being set up. He had a weak spot, as most sons have for their mothers. He was supposed to kill her, and he couldn't fire on his mom. Just like little girls love their daddy, young boys love their mommy, you know. And he had a soft spot. He couldn't do it. And then once she had died, he just broke. You know, like his dad. Killing his dad broke him. And Snoke said, "You're pathetic. You killed your dad and it split you, and the scavenger who never held the lightsaber beat you." So this follows that train of thought, right? He was already split and shattered. And you know, and that mask symbolized, and he was wearing his Kylo Ren symbolized, he was shattered. Well, guess what? The rest of it, when Leia died, his mother died. Even if you want to be a bad boy, there's always a place that he could come home to as long as his mother was alive. Once his mother died, he had no one. No one in the First Order cares about him. He's this evil prick of a dictator. The only thing he had special is the bond he had with Rey, which little should have continued to me be one-sided. But you got to also keep in mind too is that Rey was dying. He sacrificed his life for her, so deliriously saying, "Hey, you turned to light side. You're with us now," and then just leaving kind of made sense. You know what I mean? Just second time around watching, that's what I thought. I was like, well, he saved her life. I could say if you were dying, you came back to life, and you're like, oh, okay. So, and also comments about how come Kylo Ren Ben Solo could use a power that he had never used before. They have a connection. She learned how to use the Force from Ben Solo's mind. If they share a mind and their connection is very powerful, it would make sense that he, now tapping into light, could use a power that Rey could use. Just makes sense, according to the story that they've actually set up. So yeah, there's a lot of things. Palpatine looked creepy as all hell. I loved the crane, like robotic arm that was holding Palpatine around, and I like the fact that his face looked completely smooth versus having all those wrinkles. It showed that he had the dark side, he had power, but he wasn't as strong as he used to be, like in his prime. So it was interesting that you know, like happened. What else did I not like in the movie? It wasn't too much. I think it was just that the Knights of Ren didn't really do anything, but then again, I had a suspicion they were going to be like the Praetorian Guards. They just hunted people, went after people. They're just like his henchmen. So I don't believe that was a story we were going to get, but it seems like that's going to be a story that we're going to get in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic. We'll know more about the Knights of Ren. But yeah, that was something I wish we had seen the Knights of Ren a little bit more, see him do certain things. But I mean, it wasn't necessary for the story. Han Solo's appearance, I think I might have talked about that. I wasn't really happy with Han Solo showing up, but he killed it like usual. I'm glad they did not give a blue glow or tinge around him, so it pretty much was just Kylo Ren just seeing it in his mind, a manifestation of his own guilt. So, that second time around, I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, that's what that is. I recognize for what it is, so I was able to enjoy it the second time around. First time around, a lot of stuff was jarring and startling. I didn't walk out. Some people were like walking out. I wouldn't have walked out. I mean, I paid a ticket to see Star Wars. I'm gonna see Star Wars. Will I agree with everything? Probably not, but it's still, I love Star Wars. They show me things I like or I don't like. There's always gonna be something that I can relate to. There's so much of it to go around. So all in all, yeah, there were things I liked, there's things I didn't like. Second time around, I enjoyed it much more. I went with my mother and my brother, and they loved the shit out of that movie. They loved it. They enjoyed it. It was great to see the happiness in their faces. My mother said it was her favorite movie. Of all the new ones, the most amount of action. And my mother thought she was going to fall asleep, but had the most amount of action out of it. So I'm glad they actually enjoyed it. Well, that's what I felt about Rise of Skywalker. I'm going to do another video that shows all the legend stuff. I have the visual guides of Rise of Skywalker. Some of you have seen, if you follow me on Instagram, I put out a thing that shows that Revan is canon. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. what you like, what you didn't like. What are you excited about them working on next? I mean, we have different projects in store. We got Deborah Chow's Kenobi series, which I'm really excited. We got the Mandalorian season 2. We got Cassian Andor series probably coming, and then there's other things. But there's a lot of comics also coming. There's other stories that are going to go. There are things that they tease in The Rise of Skywalker. Let's see where they might be going, either in a series or in the movies when they after they take their break. And may the force of your will further your destiny, always.